most amazing artist. I hope you're having a great day today. We are going to be making the background of our Kusama pumpkins today. What I am going to do is I'm going to choose a different color piece of paper for my background. And if I look at the color wheel, I'll show a color wheel right now. I want something that's going to contrast my purple color here that I chose on the first day when we drew our pumpkin. I want something that's going to provide a higher contrast. So I'm going to choose the opposite color of purple. On the opposite side of the color wheel from purple is yellow. So that's what I'm going to do, but you can choose any color for your background that you want, but you just want to make sure that you don't do the same color that you chose for your pumpkin. Okay, so I'm actually going to set my pumpkin off to the side because we don't need him today. We're going to use him again next week. Today we're just focusing on the background. And let's talk about materials for just a second, okay? Because I know not everybody is going to have paint, but I'm going to use what's called washable tempera paint. And you can actually find this at the Dollar Tree if you want to go and get it. You don't have to though. I want to be clear on that. You do not need to have paint today. And I'm going to be using paint because what I want to do for my background is something called printmaking, which is kind of like stamping. You're going to need a wet paint for that. Watercolor won't really work that well. So if you want to go get paint, then that's totally fine, totally up to you, but you don't have to have paint. You can actually just take a Sharpie and draw your designs for your background instead, or a black crayon, whatever you have. We're going to use black though, okay? So choose a colored piece of paper. If you want to do printmaking like I'm going to show you today, then you can do that. But if you're going to draw your background, I'll show you how to draw it, okay? You're basically going to draw different shapes in a pattern. If we look at Kusama's artwork, she uses lots of different shapes in her background, and they're usually in a pattern, so they're repeating. I have some of these blocks that I'm going to use today, and these I found at like Goodwill or something, but they're really cool for printmaking because you can make lots of different designs out of them. I think I'm going to use this shape today, but you can use any shape that you want to. You could do a background of just circles if you want to. As long as it's repeating, then you're good to go. You could do triangles, squares if you want to do a square, totally up to you. I'm going to use this shape today. If you don't have blocks and you still want to do printmaking, you can actually use bubble wrap and put paint onto the bubbly side of the bubble wrap and print it onto your paper, and that will create kind of like a dot background for you. Another thing I found are these little one-piece like Lego things. I don't know what to call it, but it's like Legos and it has these little dots on, and it's the same idea. These are at Dollar Tree as well. You can just paint your black paint onto this whole thing, flip it over, and stamp it onto your paper. Okay, last option that I found is you can just use bottle caps. If you have paint and you don't know what to print make with, then you can use bottle caps, and all you do is you just either paint it onto your bottle cap, or you could dip it in your paint and then stamp it on that way. So there's lots of different things that you can do printmaking with. As long as you have paint, you can pretty much do printmaking with anything. You could use the back of a pencil, your eraser, dip it in your paint and stamp it in some kind of pattern in your background. Y'all can get really creative with this, especially if you're at home and you're working with whatever materials you have. This background is pretty free for whatever you want to do to it, as long as you're using shapes in some kind of pattern, okay? So that's what I'm going to use today, but feel free, guys, to use whatever you have at home. I also have a paintbrush so that I can easily paint onto this shape, but if you don't have a paintbrush, you can just get a little bit messy and use your fingers and just dip it in your paint like that, okay? So with all that being said, let's go ahead and start on our Kusama pumpkin background. First thing that I want to do is, of course, write my name on my paper, and then I'm going to flip it over so now my name is on the back. We don't want to do printmaking or draw on the same side as our name, because then we're just going to cover it up. It's also will be very distracting. So put your name on it, flip it over, and then you're ready to get started. So if you're going to do something similar to me, you can just follow these steps, or you can start drawing your shapes in your background. Remember to make it a pattern. That is something that repeats itself. For me, I am going to take this shape and I'm going to paint some black paint right on the back of it. We don't really need a thick layer because then it will smoosh out the side and it'll ruin our shape, but I think that's enough. And after I paint one side, what I'm going to do is I am going to flip it over and put it down on my paper. Once it's down, we cannot move it around because then we're gonna smear that paint everywhere. I'm actually just gonna press it down and make sure I'm getting that shape all the way onto my paper. Don't move it around because then you're gonna smear it. After you press it down a little bit, you can pull it up and there is my shape. So this is like a wood texture on this block here, so you can actually see that on my shape and it actually looks pretty cool. I am liking it so far, and I'm just gonna do this across my whole paper. I'm not gonna do it randomly. I'm gonna do it in rows because I want this to be kind of a patterned background. If we put them in random places, then it's going to not be a pattern, okay? So now I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna make sure it's kind of in the same position as my last one because I don't want it to look random. I want this to be intentional. I'm gonna place it down, press it down, and when I'm done, I'm gonna actually hold my paper down with my other hand that doesn't have paint on it because we don't want to get fingerprints on this. And I'm gonna hold it down and I'll pull up my shape, and there we go. I'm going to do I think I can fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can do 5 in one row, depending on what you're using at home or what shapes you want to put in your background. You might have more shapes than me, you might have less shapes than me. Totally depends on what you have decided. All right, I'm gonna try to space them evenly as well. I don't want these two to be super close together and these to be really far apart. I want them to have almost even spacing. So think about that as well while you are creating your pattern of shapes today. All right, hold the paper down and pull up. You know, I don't know if I'm actually gonna be able to fit 5 on here. I might only be able to fit 4. Let's see. If you are printmaking, this does get a little bit messy, so that's why we're using washable paint. It will be easy to wash off your fingers or whatever object you're using after you're done. Yeah, so I think I'm only gonna be able to fit 4 back here, so that's fine. Remember, if you're printmaking, do not move it around. Once it touches your paper, it has to stay in place. And I'm just gonna press it down. Once I feel like it is ready, I'm going to pull it up. And there we go. So what I'm gonna do, friends, is I'm just gonna do this all the way down my paper, and I'm gonna go in rows to make sure that this pattern is staying the same. If I was to print random places, it wouldn't really be a pattern, okay? So you can make your own pattern that you want to. You can use more than one shape. You don't have to use just one shape. Totally up to you. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish printing my background, and then I will be right back to show you what mine looks like. I just finished my background, and if you're in my face-to-face classes or even in my online classes, if you choose to do this technique, just a warning, it does get a little bit messy. I just had to use a wipe and wipe my hands off because it gets really messy, especially towards the end because this block gets covered with paint and then you're gonna get paint all over your hands, and that's totally fine. Art can be a little bit messy. The important thing is that we do not get messy on purpose. It's okay if it's just a part of the process or if it's an accident, but you should not have paint literally all over your hands, just on your fingers where you're holding and pressing down on your shape. Okay, and as you can see, I kind of decided to change the direction of my shape. So my first row up here was pointing that way, and then my second row I pointed that way, but Once I created that pattern, I had to repeat it all the way down my paper. So whatever you decide to do up towards the top is what you will do for the rest of your pattern, because a pattern repeats itself. And we need to hold on to this background and our pumpkin because next week we will put it all together. So put your background and your pumpkin in a very safe place so you are ready for next week. All right, I hope you guys had a lot of fun creating your background today, whether you did printmaking or you just drew your shapes. Whichever way will work. I can't wait to see how they turn out. I know they're going to be amazing because you guys are amazing. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.